Evan's Remains is a 2020 puzzle platform game by Whitethorn Studios, who were gracious enough to hand me a free review copy for the game itself. My footage is only from the first hour of play or so to avoid story spoilers, and was recorded from the Nintendo Switch version of the game. Hi everyone, I know this isn't my usual format, so bear with me here, but I thought that for the occasion of my first ever review code, that wasn't something I could go without giving attention to in good conscience. Evan's Remains, when you get down to it, is a pretty simple game, inspired by other puzzle games of its ilk and stylistically by visual novels similar to Danganronpa. The story follows Dices, a woman sent to a mysterious island to investigate the disappearance of a genius named Evan. There, she comes across strange hieroglyphs that seem to be solvable by finishing the corresponding platform puzzles they all contain. In addition, she also meets a man named Clover, who is there for his own reasons. It's up to you to get your way through all of the game's puzzles, find out what happened to Evan, figure out what Clover's deal is, and ultimately bring everything to light. The core of what you'll be doing here when you're not reading VN-style cutscenes is rather simple. The hieroglyph puzzles are the entire bulk of the gameplay here, and so if what's here doesn't look exciting to you, it's probably not your cup of tea, to be completely honest. It's not even what I would traditionally consider my cup of tea, actually, but I'm decent enough at puzzles to know a well-built one when I see it. The puzzles in Evan's Remains can, at times, be pretty challenging, but the challenge never really comes from the controls or timing to me. More so, the game's challenge revolves around testing your knowledge of the various ruin mechanics the hieroglyphs slowly introduce, both on their own and in conjunction with each other over the course of the game. Some of these puzzles are extremely clever, and honestly made me feel really smart for figuring them out. Some were the kind of difficult that made me feel stupid for not grasping the concept earlier. But that's pretty much what I'd come to expect with a game like this. At times, however, not often, but every now and then, I just couldn't figure some of these out. Not gonna lie, genuinely got pretty stumped at some of them. Furthermore, while the difficulty progression feels natural at first, toward the latter half of the journey, I found myself getting really stumped on one puzzle, only to find that the next was significantly less taxing. There's some dialogue that implies later that this could be an intentional thing in the plot, but digressing from that, it did feel a bit odd, flow-wise. Aside from all that, my only other complaint in the gameplay departments would probably just come to variety. Mechanically, the game stays pretty much the same throughout the entire experience, and other than the actual difficulty curve and some cool additions to the puzzles structurally, the actual playstyle stayed relatively unchanged throughout the experience. And I guess that just left me wanting for a bit more to toss it up. At times, I felt like I was kind of playing on autopilot because I was only doing the same sorts of things over and over again. And when I got stuck on a puzzle, this became even more egregious. I would say that the story helps to balance this out, but where do I begin? Full disclosure out of the gate, I don't think this game's story is bad. It's pretty good, actually. I'd say I became sufficiently emotionally invested in the characters, and it even managed to make me shed some tears towards the end. But the writing could certainly have been better when it came to the very end. The last hour-ish of the plot really feels swelled with exposition that arrives too much too fast, and ultimately ends in a way I would struggle to call bittersweet, as much as I'd just call it kinda dark. Ultimately, there's a hopeful tinge to it, but I don't think I, in good faith, could necessarily call this ending a happy one. Which, is fine. Not every ending has to be happy, but I just don't know that I took it as happily as the text seems to imply it wants people to. And I'm not sure exactly how to feel about that. If I can praise the writing for anything, though, it's that the actual buildup of the mystery is pretty good, if a bit cluttered here and there. But I suppose that's likely to do with the mystery itself needing to be stretched at certain points to account for the game's rather short runtime. It only took me around 3-ish hours to complete, and that's while I was engaging fully with the story. Seriously, I was reading every cutscene at its own pace. I didn't, skip any of them. The characters, sparse as they are also pretty well written. Protagonist Dices is, while a little bland, a sufficient mix of spunk, snark, and even some complicated motives for her job. Clover, while seeming deadpan and suspicious, actually turns out to be a really kind person who is genuinely easy to get attached to. Other incidental characters vary in favoritism as far as I'm concerned, but Dices and Clover alone are more than enough to carry the story as well as it needs to be. The soundtrack is probably my biggest praising point of this game, along with the beautiful pixel art graphical style. The game both sounds and looks gorgeous, and while simplistic, it gets the job done extremely well for what it is. The ambient drones of actual stage music fits the environment very well, while also never being too boring. In addition, the variety of more melodically inclined acoustic pieces really do a good job of selling the emotion of certain interactions, and I'd be lying if I said that the bit that made me cry didn't have some of its strengths in the music alone. Character animations are nice and subtly detailed. Character portraits, while not in my favorite art style ever, are still pretty well rendered and sufficiently expressive, and the sound design itself is pretty excellent all in all. Evan's Remains is a fine attempt at a puzzle platforming game. It weaves interesting puzzle mechanics seamlessly with poppy visuals, beautiful scoring, and an interesting, if overall slightly lacking, story. It won't take you very long to finish, but it also doesn't cost much either, and you could definitely do a lot worse with your time and money. I'm not a huge puzzle fan myself, so maybe I come across as a little duller on this than an enthusiast would. But even I can go on record to say that it is a fun, quirky little game, and I enjoyed my time with it. I don't regret giving it the spin that it deserved, and I once again thank the developers over at Whitethorn for gifting me a code so I could talk about it here. If you're partial to puzzle games and you don't mind a bit of story intrigue on the side, I'd say this is probably right up your alley. But if anything about this appeals to you from how it looks, give it a try. Who knows what you'll find waiting for you. And that's all for me. Sorry for the short video, it's just this format of video isn't something I tend to do often, and I know if I tried to make it longer, I'd just be repetitive and boring. The next proper essay-length piece is coming along sometime in the near future, just gotta figure it all out. It's gonna be a doozy, that one, but I think it will be worth the wait. Until then, you can always check me out on Patreon for some tier rewards and all that good stuff, and you can check out Evan's Remains on Steam or Itch.io down below. I'll be leaving links in the description. And, you know, there are also console versions, but you gotta find those yourself. Anyway, thanks for watching, and take care. Peace.